everyone, welcome to the National Debate. I'm Madhav Das Gopalakrishnan. Viewers, after Sri Lanka in 2022 and Bangladesh in 2024, India has witnessed the fall of yet another government in its surroundings, as Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has stepped down from his position following widespread protests across the country over corruption. The scenes in Nepal at the peak of the protests were quite dramatic, with a parliament and even the Supreme Court being set ablaze, and even former ministers being chased out of their homes and even beaten. This is the latest in a series of tumultuous regime changes in the region over the last few years, which once again raises concerns over regional stability and the fallout it could have on the region and on India as well. Remember, Nepal's fall is also an immediate security concern for India, as it could now serve as a hub for nations such as Pakistan, which have been trying to misuse it in the past, even sending terrorists to the porous India-Nepal borders. In the long term, this could also naturally affect the international world order, of course, complicating geopolitics in the face of Trump's tariffs and the formation of new global alliances. Today, on the National Debate, we are decoding the implications of these developments in Nepal on India and the future of the subcontinent. Let me quickly introduce our panelists. Joining us with us is Rose Candle. She's a social media influencer, economist and activist. Also with us from Nepal is Pratik Ghimire, journalist based in Kathmandu. Andrew K.P. Leong, international and independent China strategist, is also with us. But right here in our studio, we have Srishti Chaudhary, student. We have Dr. Richard Benkin, geopolitical analyst, human rights activist, and author of A Quiet Case of Ethnic. We also have Dhananjay Tripathi, associate professor at the South Asian University. Veena Sikri is a former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. Ashok Sajanar, former diplomat, also with us here in the studio. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Let me quickly take this across to the first point that we are debating this evening, and this is, of course, as far as what really has been the history or the tryst with democracy in Nepal. In 1951, we saw a pro-democracy movement which overthrew the existing regime. Right after this, in 1960, King Mahendra seized control and then suspended the parliament. Later, in 1991, protests forced King Birendra into the democratic setup. We also saw in 1996, Maoists launch an armed movement and establishing a republic. Later, in 2001, the horrific massacre where Birendra and his family were killed by the Crown Prince Dipendra. We also saw how in 2005, King Gyanendra suspended parliament and seized control. We later saw in 2008, the monarchy abolished, Nepal ceased to be a Hindu nation, and of course, this is of course the latest as far as what we've seen in relation to democracy. Now, why really has Nepal been up in arms? Look at some of these statistics. 20% of Nepal's 30 million population lives in poverty. There's also the fact that richest 10% earn 3 times as much as the poorest 40%. The youth unemployment between 15 to 24 is over 22%. About 2 million Nepalese citizens who work abroad. $11 billion sent as remittances to Nepal in the year 2024, and therefore Nepal's economy hugely dependent on these remittances. Let me quickly take this across to all of our guests who are joining us, and let me begin with our guests who are joining us from Nepal. Rose Candle, let me come across to you first. Many would say, just judging by these statistics, and of course, all the movement against corruption, the income inequality, people getting impatient, there's a huge diaspora population that has become important for the economy. This was the recipe for a perfect storm. And of course, later we saw what happened in relation to the social media ban as well. What, according to you, was the biggest factor influencing these tumultuous changes and protests?
Well, absolutely, we have to take whatever the stance that the current Gen Z movement has taken into our primary consideration, corruption. You know, absorbing corrupt deals over the years, over the decades, by young Nepali people. It has been really, really heart-wrenching to see our bureaucracy being, infiltrated with corrupt individuals, and unfortunately, that has slowed down the development of Nepal. You can see increase in remittance. You can see increase in migrants, labor migrants, and everything. So all of that has created a sort of frustration among the young population, which you could argue that was offset by the recent social media ban. And, addressing these issues right now to create a more transparent government so that we can hopefully move towards a track of a development for Nepal.
No, I agree with you to the extent that the protests were necessary, but there's also the counter side. Look at the total number of lives lost. Look at the huge amount of public property that has been destroyed, infrastructure for tourists, etc., being destroyed. And this is something that the economy will take a very long time to recover from, Rose Kandel, and that's something that's also causing huge amount of concern. For instance, tourism, which is one of the biggest drivers of Nepal's economy. It would take a long time for tourists to actually gain the confidence to come back if there is so much of uncertainty that continues.
Absolutely. You're totally right. The destruction were totally not, predicted. We were not expecting this amount of infiltration, and we were not expecting this amount of violence. We weren't, the Gen Z movement wasn't trying to do anything violent at all. They initiated a peaceful protest, and unfortunately with infiltration from different political groups and, a lot of different people outside of this movement, it has caused chaos and violence, which is totally heart-wrenching, and it's definitely going to take a step back for the economy of Nepal.
Absolutely. Let me bring in some of our panelists over here as well. Veena Sikri, a lot of parallels are being drawn. What's happened in Bangladesh, what's happened in Nepal, what's happened in Sri Lanka. And the one thing is that all of these mobs don't seem to have any one single leader. They all attack these government institutions. And look at what the fallout has been in Bangladesh, where you've had a rudderless regime that has gone on to, change completely the course of Bangladesh, and whether they're really acting in the interest of the nation or not. And certainly, of course, not in the interest of its neighbors, it seems, from what's happening. What's the real danger that could happen in Nepal?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There's a striking similarity between what has happened in Sri Lanka and then most recently in Bangladesh a year ago and now in Nepal. And, these movements in each of these countries claim to be leaderless, but suddenly you see a hidden hand behind coordinating very sharply all the movements. Look at that, what happened in Nepal. You said it's a leaderless movement and there was a peaceful protest, but suddenly without any warning, such extreme violence and brutality broke out. And both in Bangladesh and in Nepal, you see the attacks on all the institutions of democracy, as though they want anarchy. It's a complete mobocracy wanting anarchy. So that in Nepal, it's all the Singh Darbar, the administrative head of the government there. It's the parliament, it's the Supreme Court building, it's the, political party headquarters, and brutal killings, attacking ministers' wives and tearing off their clothes. I don't know what it's meant to prove. And in fact, the hidden hand is something that seems to be common, because even in Bangladesh, there were trainings given earlier, how to be anti-Sheikh Hasina, how to have music, youngsters, with music and rap music, being anti-Sheikh Hasina. Here too, in Nepal, there were trainings. In fact, I remember at one point, even President Trump mentioned the amount of aid going to Nepal, huge amounts, and being given for trainings. And now, recently, there has been a public, statement or an analysis on X saying that this is because the Nepal government, very pro-Chinese, wanted to actually stop their support for the Western internet groups like Google, etc., and go in for the Chinese Google group and eliminate the Western groups. This was one of the big issues that was apparently there, and that was perhaps what caused it. But I think that this feeling that it's not really the people of Nepal who've done it, but have been goaded into it, is growing even in Nepal. And a lot of feedback from there is coming from that. And look at the way the jails were broken open. Absolutely. Bangladesh the same thing, Nepal the same thing. Absolutely. In Nepal it was to release Rabi Lamichhane, and in Bangladesh it was to release all the Islamists, all the people who had been imprisoned because of their, violent activities by Sheikh Hasina. They were released. And in Nepal, together with Rabi Lamichhane, thousands others got free, and many of them have come to the Indian border. So, obviously, where India is not involved in it at all, it's entirely an internal matter of Nepal. But certainly for us, when all these people come at the border...
There are massive cultural ties, people-to-people contact.
There who are stranded, tourists, pilgrims,
and it's an open border pretty much as far as India and Nepal is concerned. Number of points you made there, in fact, Veena Sikri. But let me get in Prateek Ghimire on that for a counter from Nepal. Prateek Ghimire, is there a sense now that several days since the violence began, that there's a possibility that there could be an outside hand and not so much an spontaneous movement, but something that's more organized? Because people are saying, how is it possible that suddenly, within 48 hours, all of these institutions were set ablaze? There's so much of violence that's breaking out for something that's leaderless, rudderless in that sense. It does appear to be quite strange. Pratik.
The Gen Z movement, which was started, has come to a certain conclusion, of course, because the demand was to dissolve the parliament and to make an interim government, which will in next 6 months or 1 year hold a new election of parliament, and then the political course in Nepal will be set anew. So right now, this is the breaking news, and what I want to tell you regarding.
But is there a foreign hand? There is a perception that there could have been a foreign hand. What do you think about that?
I don't think so, because me being a journalist, but I'm also from a Gen Z group or Gen Z community, or I am from that age group, let's say. So what I think is this was not because of social media ban. Social media ban was just a tipping point or turning point. This is really because Nepal's young population has been unemployment, and the unemployment problem in Nepal is from so far, the economic inequality and everything, the problem, the corruption and everything is in Nepal from very back, and all of these problems were in a place. And this social media ban, social media was a civic space for Gen Z or young population, where they used to express their ideas and everything. But again, banning the social media was banning a civic space, was against the freedom of expression and freedom of speech. So this only became a tipping point or a turning point to fuel a movement. So
no, nobody has a problem with the Gen Z movement, sir. All of the concerns that you raise are valid. The problem is with the violence. When you talk about, speaking for an anti-corruption movement, and yet you burn down a newspaper which has been exposing corruption in Nepal, that's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah. So what I think in this, that there was no one single leader of this movement. Everyone was involved on their own. So when there is a single leader, you can't control all the people in the moment from one person or in a single direction. So when that happens, the opportunist groups and every others already can involve in that, and with their opportunist ideas or what they have been trying to do, they did all this violence.
So which are these opportunists is a big question at this point of time. I think let me bring in Mr. Ashok Sajanar on that. Who are these opportunist groups who've perhaps taken advantage of all the chaos, all the confusion on ground and actually unleashed this violence? Could there be vested interests involved? And we really don't know. There's nothing really to prove which these vested interests are at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madhav. You're very right. I think as far as the Gen Z movement as such is concerned, and, some of the other members, they claim that, their protest was supposed to be peaceful. It was really initiated by Hami Nepal, Sudan Gurung, and he had asked these youngsters basically, to come in their school uniforms, and they would come and peacefully go and protest about that. But then it was taken over by some of the infiltrators. And they are the ones who really caused all this mayhem in terms of burning, in terms of all these, changes that take place. Another reason, Madhav, that has been mentioned as to why did it so suddenly deteriorate into what happened, on the 9th in terms of burning down the Parliament House, burning down the Presidential Palace, burning down the Supreme Court and so many hotels and all that, is also because on the 8th itself, without all that much of a provocation, there were 19 young students, children, some of them, from school, they were gunned down. Now, of course, Nepal has had a history of protests and demonstrations. In your own account, you showed 1990, there was a huge protest demonstration. 2006, there was huge. But this number, that time also in 2006, 19 people killed, not children, people killed over a span of 6 months, not over, in one day. Right. And I think that is what really angered the people, and I think they really lashed out and went around, because that is something that they, and there was this feeling of vengeance that you have killed our children and we are going to sort of, take revenge on you. So I think from all accounts, you said, it was all sudden. But the last point I'll make here is, I think it had been long in the making. It was not all that sudden. It was all pent-up frustration, pent-up anger. All these things that have been spoken about as far as the economy is concerned, malgovernance, corruption, non-transparency, lavish lifestyle.
Right.
And then the whole thing was, it had become a revolving door. Meaning there were these three prime ministers, Oli, Sher Bahadur Daiba and Prachand. For the last 10 years, they are the ones who had been interchanging the position of the prime minister. So the people had got fed up and tired. And this social media ban was the last trigger. It was a spark. Literally the last straw on the camel's back.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Srishti on that. You're a youngster from Nepal. You're, of course, studying here in the national capital. But the question that many would be asking is this, that one, he's talking about the unstable politics, the revolving door, not a single prime minister, for instance, completing their full tenure over the last several years. Now, what really has caused this kind of frustration and why has this sparked off now? It's not just the social media ban, because we've seen some videos, for instance, which have been going viral for the past 6 months, where people and youngsters are talking about their frustration with issues of corruption, with issues of governance. What is your analysis of this?
So basically, my whole life was in Nepal. I studied in Nepal, and when I was growing up, I could hear people talking about corruption, about government, about what government is doing, what government is not doing. I could see my friends leaving for opportunities for employment out of Nepal, and there was a big question in my head that why are they leaving? Why are they leaving their own country? And when it was my turn to leave Nepal, I knew the reason. The reason is there is no employment, there is no opportunities, there is no nothing. And the reason behind this was the government, the corrupted government. And lately when the youth started to show the reality of politicians and their lifestyle, they could not take it. So they decided to ban the social media completely and ask the youth to register on all the apps. They banned 26 social media apps and they asked them to register it. So that they can take over all the apps and delete the data which is opposing them, but which was not right. Banning social media.
So they want to censor all these apps, basically.
Banning social media will not stop them. That is the reason they decided to protest, and they came on street. But nobody could ever imagine that the protest could take this huge turn, that we'll lose around 22 people, youths, youngsters. But we, and I guess I completely agree with sir that it was out of rage that it happened on 9th of September, the restrictions that happened. It was out of rage, but the protest was for betterment of the future and betterment of the nation. It was not for the social media ban or anything like that.
Right. Dhananjay Tripathi, you're somebody who's an expert on matters concerning Nepal. What do you see as the impact and the fallout of this? Do you see any of this impacting upon India and its own concerns?
See, we have an open border with Nepal. Definitely there is a concern because as our panelists have already said, that their jails are broken. And, many of them may like to hide from here and there. So one easy way is to get into India. So that's one concern. India has a lot of investment in Nepal. So that is a second concern as how things are evolving. Number third is India has a very strong political relations with Nepal historically. And it is not only of the cultural roti beti ka sambandh. We also have a very strong political connections. In fact, if you look at the political history of Nepal, without India, you cannot imagine, you cannot really draw the sketch of the political history of Nepal. So India is a very important player in this country, and definitely India has to wait and watch, has to look how the situation are emerging. Our friend from Nepal has said that Sushila Karki is likely to be the interim prime minister, which is a good news because we need lawlessness, and leaderless country is going to be in an anarchical setup, which is not good for that country and for the neighbors. So definitely something happening in neighbors, if anarchy is in the neighborhood, it is a problem for a country. We want a stable Nepal. We want a peaceful and a prosperous Nepal. And I hope that with the coming of an interim government, we will try to again build up our own contact with the interim government.
Right. And in fact, of course, there's a huge amount of cultural and otherwise attachment also between the two countries. But let me bring in Dr. Richard Benkin. Dr. Richard Benkin, when in fact we saw President Trump come in, and this is a big question about which is this hand that is driving these protests. Whether there is a hand or not, we don't know for sure. But we have seen how, there was some amount of funding of the MCC projects, if I've got it right, which was made, and in fact it was restricted. Since then, of course, that's once again started. So there has been a tussle. There has been a tussle for influence. Nepal, on the one hand, sandwiched between India and China, and on the other hand, of course, United States and all global powers would want their own strategic interests in Nepal to be maintained. What really is going on? Do you think there is some kind of foreign hand?
Well, first, I had nothing to do with it. Seriously, though, I have seen nothing, not a scintilla of evidence to tell me that this was anything except an uprising by the people of Nepal to seize their own future. It disturbed me because I saw this last year with Bangladesh, that so many people can't seem to give credit to the people of these countries, as if they can't do anything unless it's at the behest of a larger power. But in fact, that is what happens. It's happened throughout history. I can tell you that it's not just the income inequality, but as has been mentioned here, this has been building for so long. It's not the income inequality, it's the fact that it's not a level playing field. There's been no attempt to address structural problems. They haven't solved the corruption that prevents people from having that future. So this is really just a matter of the people of Nepal, and I think powers like India, like the United States or China or whomever, we should be helpful. We should be there to support them. But we should recognize that this is a matter for the people of Nepal. It's their country, it's their futures, and it's up to them to decide what that future is. I will also mention one very quickly. The same thing in Bangladesh. I can tell you that months before the revolution, I was in Dhaka, and I had students and young faculty telling me there's no freedom, there's no free speech, and boom. A number of months later, there was a coup. And again, people were saying, gee, was the United States involved? Was China involved? Let's give credit to the people of Nepal. That's the only evidence that we've seen so far.
But in the case of Bangladesh, at least, there's a role of United States that's been recorded. And let me get in a quick word from Dr. Veena Sikri. And I'm coming back to you on that.
Yeah, just to respond to what you said, I mean, the same thing was being said in Bangladesh when it first happened at that time. Oh, let it be, the people are... But it's come out now how it actually happened. All that I said about the trainings, about telling the people, teaching them rap music, focusing on the youth and the students. And the issue, the quota reform issue didn't even exist because the Supreme Court had already overturned it. But the violence was absolutely, killing policemen. That happened. You say that, people have died, but policemen have died. Their weapons have been seized. So I think while I'm absolutely clear that there is no question of interference from anybody, I mean, nobody wants, any interference, and the people of Nepal, are our great friends, and we want the best for them. Our Prime Minister has expressed his great sorrow at the loss of life. But, even to burn buildings takes planning. Even to burn a building like Hilton Hotel, to set it on fire and destroy it, cannot happen in 10 hours. It needs a lot of planning, a lot of material, and it can't happen spontaneously. So I think one has to accept that.
Regime pay the price for not playing footsie with the United States is the question that many were asking after that particular, because there was a particular island, etc., that was being demanded strategically speaking, and her regime didn't relent. This was the claim that was being made at least after that particular revolution.
Yeah, that claim is not. Again, I can tell you that we had nothing to do with it. I certainly didn't. But beyond that, look at the results. Look at what's happened. When they finally hold elections next year, if Jamaat does not win it, they certainly will have a role in a coalition government. Events have not proceeded at all in a way that would be good for the United States, although the United States was able to work out a trade agreement with Bangladesh. But it just hasn't worked out that way. Okay. The fact is, in fact, China's role in Bangladesh has even gotten stronger. Not only has Mohammed Yunus been to China a number of times, but China has already tightened its grip on Chittagong port and is developing Mongla port close to Kunan, close to India. So this is not something the United States wants.
All right. Andrew K. P. Leung, would you like to respond to that? It's China that's actually building up its grip within Bangladesh, developing the port infrastructure, so on and so forth. And also there's a sense that this particular person who has now been ousted, KP Sharma Oli, was somebody who's very close to China. He was there, for instance, in China recently as far as the military parade is concerned as well.
Agreed with the majority views of the panel that this is really an inbuilt movement of the younger generation, the so-called Generation Z, who are fed up with the kind of corruption and lack of progress of the country. And this has been going on for decades, and it's boiling over now. I mean, you would look at the so-called revolutions in recent years, either be it color revolutions or other forms of revolution. They don't happen just overnight. It is built up over the years of internal discontent. It's a social discontent now expressed by younger people who see the future dwindling, the lack of opportunities, and then the whole system is wrecked by corruption, and then there's rising up in arms. But no one wants a chaos. I mean, not least, of course, Nepal's neighboring nations, including India and China, because the instability in this highly fraught region is going to destabilize the kind of geopolitical landscape. So I think that the country should watch it carefully. Of course, no neighbors and the international community do not want this situation to descend into violence and destruction. But I think that at the end of the day, the Nepal people is going to select a new leader, and then the social discontent would translate itself into various programs to address these ills or perceived deficiencies. And then at that time, when the situation stabilizes, then neighbors could come in to help with the Nepalese people, either in economic development or other kind of measures. But I think that both India and China do not want to have a disorderly and chaotic neighbor, particularly in Nepal, is really a linchpin of the stability of the border disputes between India and China. So I think that it's in the interest of both countries, now that the relationships are being recalibrated between India and China, to see a more stable Nepal, a Nepal which is grappling with its age-old problems of corruption and also the social backwardness, and giving the opportunities to the younger people. I think that that's what all neighbors want.
This is, of course, why this is such a huge issue of concern as far as India is concerned. Let's quickly get those graphics up on the screen. Why Nepal matters to India, not just because of the 3.5 million Nepalis who work or live in India, but also, of course, the 1,750 kilometers of Nepal's long border with India, a lot of which is in fact quite porous and open. There are 32,000 Gorkha soldiers of Nepal who serve in the Indian Army as well, and $8.5 billion is the annual India-Nepal bilateral trade. Let's take a look at some of the other aspects as well as far as the India-Nepal relationship is concerned. India is also keeping a very close watch on those developments, because it has been talking about India's adversaries in this particular area. In fact, to weaponize in the neighborhood as well is one of the concerns. It may complicate geopolitics in the face of Trump's tariffs and the realignment there. Can restructure international order amidst regime changes. China and US tensions amidst the instability can also make the region further tense. Let's take a quick look at some of the other security concerns as well, if we can quickly get that up on the screen. There are serious security concerns that India also has, and this is one of the biggest ones. Nepal has long been misused by the ISI, has been sending terror across the border. We've seen the Bihar police, of course, on high alert after intelligence alerts coming in from there. The intelligence has also been talking about 3 Pakistan terrorists attempting to enter India via Nepal. 13,000 prisoners escaping from jails in over 70 plus districts. There's also, of course, the SSB, which has detained 63 Nepal prisoners at the India-Nepal border. let's quickly get this in fact, from the security perspective as well. All right, there is also the larger issue of regional stability. We've seen what's happened in the neighborhood of India. This is 2021 in Afghanistan, where Taliban swept into Kabul after US's withdrawal. We've seen what's happened in 2022 in Pakistan, with the Imran Khan government ousted after a no-confidence vote. In Sri Lanka in 2022 as well, the economic fragility led to government's collapse at that point of time. In 2024, in Bangladesh, the job quota stir led to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's ouster as well. And of course, 2025 in Nepal, where the anti-graft protest has led to PM Oli's resignation. Ashok Sazinar, I'd like you to come in on this, because there are a whole series of concerns. Not only do we have ties, the roti-beti relationship, which one of the other guests was talking about, but there's also very serious ties as far as defense are concerned. There's a Gorkha regiment. We know the special arrangement that we have as far as our chief of army staffs are concerned, so on and so forth. So there's historic ties, and there are very real security concerns at the same time, which could also go, a bit awry if things are not handled properly.
No, you're very right, Madhav, and I think the Indian government has been making very proactive efforts to reach out to the Nepalese government, particularly over the last 10, 11 years, meaning I could give example when Prime Minister Modi went within a few months when he came to power in 2014. He was sworn in May 2014. His first visit to Nepal was in early August 2014, and that was the first bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Nepal in 17 years. So I think India has been paying a lot of attention in terms of reaching out. And, your listeners and viewers might recall what Prime Minister Modi had said, that we will buy hydropower from Nepal and make it into a developed country. And I think that is what the idea was. Our relations, over the last few years, Prime Minister has gone there 4 or 5 times. So our relations were good, our relations were strong, although we'd seen that Mr. KP Sharma Oli, being a communist, he was leaning much more towards China, but still at the people-to-people level. But what you mentioned as far as the security issues are concerned, that is huge. In addition to all this that you mentioned, Madhav, you could also add that the IC-814 aircraft, that was also, took off from Kathmandu, and it was hijacked. And then it had been taken to Kandahar, first to Amritsar, then to Kandahar. And it had gone from there. So I think this is a porous border. You mentioned 1,750 kilometer long border. So I think what India really needs to do is to keep, it has been in touch with the political parties in Nepal, but I think they are, at least for the time being, they are in the background. So whoever are the new leaders from Gen Z in Nepal, I think India will need to reach out to them. India will need to connect with them so that India is ready to extend whatever help, support and assistance that they need to get from here.
Absolutely. And of course, there is a state of flux over there, Pratik Himire. Of course, we are just seeing how the government there is developing, and of course, a new government is being formed. But these are some very serious security concerns, because if we have over 13,000 prisoners escaping jailbreaks happening, then there's obviously some serious security concerns. And there's a high possibility of several of those being inimical to India's interests and people being caught at the borders, or at least a high alert at the borders that we are seeing. So how are we looking at all of this panning out, and how will the new regime ensure that things don't go completely out of hand?
So right now, Nepal Army is taking the lead in the security of Nepal, the internal security and all that. So let's hope all those who have escaped the prison, they will come back, and or the security forces will bring them back, because according to data, around 2,000 prisoners are already brought back to the prisons, and the security forces have called them to voluntarily come back, or they will snatch them. So this is really a concern, not just for India-Nepal border, but also for the internal security of Nepal. Because I was just reading a news yesterday that a person who was convicted of rape escaped from the prison in this moment, and again he tried to rape a woman. So this kind of security concerns are already in place. So I guess the new interim government of Nepal and India should work closely and they should jointly patrol the border, the SSB of India and Armed Police Force APF of Nepal, who is responsible for the security of the border. They should hold joint patrollings and joint meetings to
all right.
make this.
But let me bring in Veena Sikri on that. Veena Sikri, joint patrolling and all is very idealistic, but we know the kind of layout as far as the border is concerned. We know how open and porous it has been traditionally. But perhaps 2,000 out of 13,000 is good for the past 2-3 days that since they've been acting, but that's still a huge issue of concern for India.
Absolutely. Madhav, you're absolutely right, because India, as part of our Prime Minister Modi's neighborhood first foreign policy, has given the highest priority to having our neighbors as democratic, stable, prosperous, and absolutely bilateral cooperation to bring this about. And actually, you can see that India-Bangladesh was the textbook example of cooperation. India-Nepal also, on hydropower, and India-Bhutan and so on. Now, to see this wave of anarchy being introduced in this neighborhood is a matter of great concern for India. Why is it happening, First you tried in Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka, of course, fortunately, the people have gone back to the constitutional method. They had an interim president, and now they've had elections, they've got a new government. But in Bangladesh, they're still struggling. There's complete anarchy there, and the people themselves are saying it was much better earlier, under Sheikh Hasina's time. Now, in Nepal, again, we are so concerned that this effort to destabilize the existing parties, to destabilize any existing structures of stability, not only the buildings, but whether it's a constitution they want to change in the constitution, whether it is a political party. If the Gen Z is, I think they're very interested in governing, and that's a very good thing, but then they must find out the way they can participate, maybe make their own political party, participate in elections, get the votes, not try to eliminate the other parties. Now in Bangladesh today, because the Jamaat-e-Islami and the NCP don't have the voting support, so they're trying to eliminate Awami League, keep them out, eliminate Jatiya Party, keep them out. That's not the way of democracy. That will create more instability down the line.
Absolutely.
So we're very worried that in Nepal, that they should indeed, we wish Justice Suchita Karki every success. She's a very eminent person. She's very well respected. She has given some of the strongest and best judgments when she was the first lady Chief Justice of Nepal Supreme Court. So I think we must wish her, and we are willing to cooperate with her in every way to bring stability back, to bring that same, the people of Nepal worked for years to get a constitution. Absolutely. And now they're saying destroy it. Now, do you mean another 9 years to get another constitution? It's very worrisome.
Absolutely. So but it's not all doomsday. There is Colombo and Sri Lanka also, which is perhaps a more positive example. So I'll bring in Rose Kandel on that. Rose Kandel, there are two paths before Nepal. There is a path of Bangladesh and there is a path of Colombo. And how quickly you arrive at building up a new system, making sure that this new constitutional system that you've struggled for, your country has struggled for decades, and it has come through, that all of this effort doesn't go into waste, and that you get into the act of governance, which is why you had these protests in the first place happen at the earliest.
Absolutely right. I mean, the concerns, they're very valid. They're extremely valid. But what we have to also understand is that, everything has happened in such a short time frame. And I think we do need to give the Nepali Gen Z the credit, because we had the protests begin on September 8th, and by September 12th, we have a new prime minister. We have been able to receive the demands, and we have been able to, have our army help us with law and security. So I do want to think that it will take a positive track, because within the 4-day frame, we're able to do so much. So I'm very positive about that. But I definitely agree. Democracy needs to be protected at all costs. Now is the time. We have, appointed a new leader. So now is the time to, get our think tank, get our policy analysts together, and try to understand where we're going to go from now on. Taking in the needs and wants of Gen Zs, creating a new leadership, creating a system where you directly elect a prime minister, which was one of our biggest demands. That changes the game for everything, because in Nepal, prime minister, they are the ones to make the big decision. So being able to elect them, the citizens directly being able to elect them is a huge winner already. And so I really, hope with all the knowledge and the wisdom that we have, we're able to create something new, innovative, protecting our democracy, and also pushing us towards the path to where Gen Zs wanted us to go, the
Right.
path of development. And, the stability of Nepal is very crucial to all the geopolitical forces around us. It's crucial to India. It's crucial to China. And hopefully this new movement, it will create an optimistic form of stability and development.
Absolutely.
And help.
Let me bring in Dr. Richard Benkin again. Dr. Richard Benkin, here's the quote that I want to actually get you on, because this was what was stated in Bangladesh. I'm taking you back to the argument of Bangladesh. U.S. State Department official Mike Benz had said he had revealed that the USAID and affiliated organizations had orchestrated efforts to undermine the Bangladeshi government in a bid to secure American interests. This has been stated by a State Department official. So therefore the concerns are, could the similar script be playing out in Nepal?
Okay. First of all, individuals say a lot of stuff, especially right now when there are what Donald Trump refers to as a deep state, but when there are longtime employees who really don't like the current administration. This happens all the time. So I wouldn't necessarily give it credence until I saw evidence of exactly what America was doing. And in fact, we know the Trump administration has basically eliminated those USAID programs, which, by the way, some of which actually went to groups that have been persecuting Hindus in Bangladesh. But that aside, I think this period of chaos that we're seeing, we can't look at it as something unique to Bangladesh, to Nepal. We just have better communication systems. My country had a great deal of chaos. We tore up the first constitution, had a number of rebellions before we stabilized. Look at France after the French Revolution, Russia after the Russian Revolution, and on and on. This is pretty much what happens after a government is toppled. The people have to figure out what they're going to do with it. And again, as so many people have said here, our job, and certainly mine as a foreigner, is to just be supportive, to try and give assistance where needed, and to support democratic principles, to support what the people did this for.
All right. Andrew Kepilung, I want you to come in on this because, China is one country where Mr. Oli was leaning towards, yet we saw how, interestingly, nothing much really moved as far as the Belt and Road Initiative are concerned. So both China and US were trying to win over Nepal on their side, yet nothing really happened. The big question is what happens from here on as far as China is concerned?
Well, I think that both China and India should take advantage of this opportunity of rapprochement or recalibration of relationship between India and China and try to work together to stabilize the situation in Nepal, but only after the Nepal politics sort themselves out, and let the Nepal people speak and elect a new, cleaner government that cater for the interests of the people, particularly the younger people, giving them hope, giving them opportunities, giving them a new future. Now, how is this going to be done? I think that when the situation stabilizes, both India and China should work with the new Nepalese government to establish Nepal as a regional cooperation zone between India, China, Nepal, other countries, and rather than just focusing on tourism, but focusing perhaps on a new economy, especially the young people, the Z generation, the AI and various kind of technologies, and also rather than heavy reliance on energy and agriculture, looking at the future. And I think that there is also building infrastructure, necessary infrastructure. So I think that these offer huge opportunities for both India and China and the new Nepal government to work together to bring a new future for Nepal, a new future for the Nepalese younger generation.
Right. Dhananjay Tripathi, I want you to come in on this because there are still huge amount of issues. While India and Nepal have worked on power, a number of areas, but there are still a lot of flashpoints. Lippu Lake, for instance, is one where the role of China also comes under question, where, the role of India comes under question. How do you see all of these issues being resolved? Because while at the moment we're looking at the domestic, kind of situation, the unsettled situation for that to be resolved, but there are a number of unresolved questions that continue to remain from a strategic point of view.
Madhav, you brought an excellent point, I think. Why India, Nepal, what all we talked about, the border problems, how it happened. Actually, it was the Prime Minister Oli. Whenever he was in a kind of a pressure in a domestic politics, he has used India card, and to build his political capital. And this we have seen over the years. So he has passed a map in the parliament. He brought the map in a currency note. All of it.
And he never visited India, despite his many tenures, right?
Yeah. So it's all because of that. And we have such a mature relation, India and Nepal. We just need to sit together and resolve it. But it was on his side that he look at his statement even today. What he's saying, he has given a take on India as well. So I think it's all primarily because of Oli and his old political, the way he has conducted himself over the years. And he supposed to be a very authoritarian. At the end, we have seen in last 1 year, he was not listening even to his alliance partner. And that has led to this kind of a situation. And the way he handled this protest, in fact, what was required was a little bit of sensitivity towards these young people. What he had done, he has used brute force. And that led to this kind of violence and what we have seen in Nepal. But I also like to come on one point which you are trying to ask, the question of deep state. Not directly, but definitely if anybody knows Nepal, they also know that there are a lot of NGOs that are there in Nepal. We also know that how these NGOs are connected with a lot of funds coming from the West. We know that US Embassy in Nepal maintain a very good contact with the young people there. So I'm against conspiracy theory. But to say that there is nothing, no hand, no role, to me, this kind of means, of course, there was an anger. But such kind of a rage, such kind of a violence can't happen unless you have planned something in advance. And it's not against, means Prachanda was in support of Zhang Zi. He has offered his support. Even he was attacked. So somebody wanted to eliminate the entire political class in Nepal. Means I can understand the anger, but the anger is not properly channelized.
It was moving in a particular direction. Shishri, you want to respond to that? Was that anger perhaps controlled in certain ways? And also what he said as far as the previous regime is concerned, that whenever he had domestic problems, he would rake up international issues, rake up issues with the India border, etc., to try and divert from them. Is that a sense that you also share?
Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, whenever there was any problem in the country going on, it used to turn into an international connection between India and China, we can say. But I don't know much about the...
All right.
Yeah.
All right. But would you like to come in on this? Because, one of the things that I wanted to refer to is what had happened in the wake of, on the 6th of May 2025, we had seen Kathmandu host an 11-member delegation from Pakistan's National Defense University. And that is a visit that coincided with India's heightened military posturing following the Pahalgam terror attack. Earlier, Nepal had expressed solidarity. But do you think that there was a lot of messaging also going out from Kathmandu before all of this happened, particularly at such a sensitive time for India?
No, absolutely. I think, as we've been talking about Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, meaning not only did he start in 2020 that, this Lipu Lake, Limpaduria, Kalapani, etc., but in 2015, you would recall that, when the constitution was coming in, then he was advised that he had to take, the interests of the Madhesis, people who are living in the Tarai, on board. But he just brushed it aside. Because basically he was interested in his own position, in his own chair, and also he appealed to hyper-nationalism in 2020, basically rousing the ire of the people and in the parliament against India, so that, he could get this map passed, he could get this, even as far as the coin, getting an imprint of the new map on the coins, etc., etc. Now, the point that you make here, because, he is the only Prime Minister, Madhav, who after coming to power, he came to power last year, because as I said, 2022, there were elections. That's just about 3 years. In that 3 years, there have been 4 changes of government.
Absolutely.
And in 2 of them, Prachanda was there, Sher Bahadur Daiba was there, and then he came. All prime ministers, whenever they have taken over first, they have visited India, again, because of the strength of the relation, historicity, civilizational. But as far as Mr. Oli is concerned, he went to China, just to send out a message. And so here he was hobnobbing with countries that are inimically or as, adversarially.
Absolutely, and that's the big lesson. When you ignore lessons of history, this is what tends to happen often. And because the two countries don't just have historic ties, whether it comes to the common border, common religious ties, social ties, cultural ties, linguistics, etc., but there is history that is far more deeper that binds the two countries, and that's really something that is a big message going out of here. Veena Sikri, Ashok Sajanhar, Dhananjay Tripathi, Srishi Chaudhary, Dr. Richard Benken, and I guess from outside, Rose Kandel, Prateek Ghimire, as well as Andrew K. Leung. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.